The air in Dry Creek stank of sweat, dust, and something meaner. Flies buzzed over the auction pen, swarming to heat and cruelty like they knew it by name. Men stood shoulder to shoulder in boots, caked with horse dung and greed, eyes squinting under the white hammer of noon sun. They laughed, spat tobacco juice, shouted bids, and didn't seem to notice or care that today's auction block didn't just hold livestock. Behind a rusted iron cage, a girl crouched, knees drawn to her chest, long black hair tangled over, her face like a net spun from shadow and blood. She looked young, but wore a woman's pain. Her wrists were chafed raw. Her eyes didn't blink, just stared, just watched. She don't talk, the auctioneer barked. Don't scream, don't cry, don't bite unless you're slow. $5 starts it. 5 for the beast. The crowd jeered. Some whistled. Some booed. No one bid. She's Apache. The man went on. Taken up near the White Cliffs. Killed 2 men with a skinning knife before they got a rope on her. A man in a bowler hat muttered, "Too wild to bed. Too scrawny to break." Another, "I'd pay 5 to see her hanged instead." No one laughed harder than the auctioneer. Then someone moved. From the back of the crowd, boots hit the ground with slow, steady weight. A man in a wide-brimmed hat and worn-out duster pushed through the gawkers. He didn't speak, didn't shout. His boots spoke for him. He stepped up to the cage, looked down at the girl. She stared back, unflinching. 5, he said, just 1. Word. The auctioneer blinked. Say again? The man pulled a silver coin from his coat pocket, flipped it high into the air. It spun like a bullet before landing in the dirt. Heads up, I said 5. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind before a storm. That's Calder Briggs, someone hissed. Old rancher. Lives out past Widow's Gulch. Here he ain't spoke more than 10 words since the war. He's crazy. Buried. His wife with her wedding dress on, and ain't been right since. Calder didn't hear or didn't care. He reached for the cage door. The auctioneer laughed again, uneasy now. She's yours, mister. But don't say I didn't warn you. The key turned. The cage creaked open. The girl didn't move. Get out, Calder said, voice gravel low. Still she stared. He turned, started walking away. Behind him, the chain rattled. The girl stepped out, barefoot and silent as the grave. Followed him. They didn't speak the entire walk through Dry Creek. Behind them, the town resumed its ugly rhythm. A dog barked. A card game resumed in the saloon. No one noticed the pair disappear down the dusty road except a boy selling apples, who watched the girl vanish into the heat, shimmer like a ghost UNBUR IED. At Calder's ranch. The wind carried no song. Just the creak of the barn gate, the groan of wood, the distant cry of a hawk. He pointed to the water trough. Wash. She did, scrubbing her arms with dirt first, then water. As if she didn't trust the wet alone to make her clean, he brought her bread, cold beans, and the knife, set it down and stepped away. She didn't eat for 5 minutes, just stared at the knife, then ate fast. Every bite like it might be her last. That night, Calder sat on his porch, boots propped, bottle of whiskey, untouched beside him. The girl sat on the steps, wrapped in an old horse blanket, staring out over the field like she was waiting for something to crawl out of the dark and try to take her again. He didn't ask her name. She didn't offer one. I don't want your. Thanks, he muttered finally. Ain't no charity here. You stay as long as you work. The moon rose. Coyotes cried in the hills. In the dead of night, Calder woke with a start. Something pressed against his neck. Cold, thin. Steel. His eyes opened. The girl stood above him, the blade from dinner held tight in her shaking hand. He didn't move. Do it, he said. She didn't. Outside, horses screamed, then silence. Then hooves. Calder sat up slowly. She backed off, still holding the knife, pulled the rifle from under his bed, and peered through the window. Riders. 3 of them. Moving quiet, torches unlit. He turned to her. You know them? No answer. He grabbed his coat, tossed her the shotgun. She caught it. Expert hands. Come on, then, he said. They took cover behind the barn. The riders split, one toward the house, 2 toward the corral. They're not here for cattle. He whispered Dot. She nodded once. Then she ran straight into the dark. Damn it, he hissed, but she didn't run away. She circled behind them. The first scream was muffled. The second rider fell without a shot. Calder took the third with a slug to the chest. Dot by dawn. The bodies were burning. Calder stood over the pyre, shotgun slung on his back. The girl watched from a distance, arms crossed. You've done this before? He said. Dot still no reply. He sighed. You can talk. I know it. She met his gaze. Her eyes weren't empty. They were full of storms. Dot. He turned to walk back toward the house. Paused. Figure I ought to call you something. No answer. I'll call you Mika. Means little moon. She blinked once. He walked on. She followed. Dot. 2 days passed. She repaired the fence, fed the chickens, hauled hay without complaint. Calder gave her a blanket, boots, and spaced out at night. She carved. Bits of wood, bone, and scrap. Her hands made animals, spirits, war totems. On the 5th day, he found a carving on the barn wall. A crude figure of a tall man and a smaller figure behind him. He stared at it a long while. Later that evening, he brought her a fresh shirt and stew. This land, it don't forget blood, he said. I buried my wife here. Thought that'd be the end of me too. She listened, head tilted. He looked at her. You kill them men? She nodded. Good. Next morning, the sheriff came. Wide on his saddle, badge gleaming. Briggs, he called. Heard you picked up something wild at auction. Calder stepped down from the porch. I picked up someone who was caged like a dog. That's all. She's got a bounty on her head. Apache killer. Raided a wagon train near 3 Forks. I saw her kill 3 men trying to burn down my barn. I figure that evens things. Sheriff spat in the dirt. She ain't legal, Briggs. Neither was hanging women in cages. I'm not here to fight, but you best know you're standing against more than me. Men with money want her gone. Calder stepped closer. Then tell them to come themselves. The sheriff left. That night, Calder drank half the bottle. Mika sat on the porch with him. No words, just silence. Before dawn, she handed him a small carving. A hawk, wings spread. He looked at it. Dot. She pointed to the sky. Then at him. Dot. He understood. Was giving him back something he didn't know he'd lost. She'd seen him. The man who spoke to no one. And she'd answered. He closed his fingers around the carving and nodded. Dot. The storm wasn't over. But now he wasn't riding into it alone. The morning after the sheriff's visit broke slow, with a hush that felt unnatural, like the land itself was holding its breath. Calder stood at the edge of the porch, eyes on the horizon, boots planted firm, his coffee untouched. Mika moved. Behind him, barefoot in the dust, quiet as a deer in shadow. She didn't speak, still hadn't, but her presence was solid now, like another fence post in the ranch's weary spine. The wind whispered dry secrets across the field. The barn doors flapped in lazy rhythm. Nothing felt safe. You ever break a horse? Calder asked, not turning. Mika paused, eyes narrowing. She pointed to herself, then mimicked gripping reins, legs squeezing imaginary flanks. Then mind falling hard. Calder grunted. Yeah, that sounds about right. She moved to the fence line, where a young mustang pawed the dirt and snorted, nervous but curious. He watched her crouch low, extend a hand. The horse stepped back. She waited, still. Patient. He leaned against the porch rail, arms crossed, his voice soft with something he wasn't ready to name. That's how it starts. Let the wild think it's free. Then you work slow, steady, until it trusts you. Mika didn't look back, but she heard him. The days passed, hot and dry. The soil cracked beneath their boots, and the sky offered no mercy. They worked from dawn to dusk mending fence posts, hauling feed, moving cattle with whistles and dust trails. Mika never complained. She didn't ask questions. She listened, learned she was clever with her hands faster than Calder expected. She repaired an old saddle using sinew and hide, crafted a rope halter that fit better than anything he'd bought from town. He didn't ask where she'd learned that. He didn't need to. One evening, Calder came in early from the fields. He found her at the kitchen table, sketching with charcoal on scraps of old grain sacks. The drawing showed the ranch, but not as it was, as it could be. Fences whole, roof patched, smoke rising from a chimney that hadn't burned wood in years. He studied the sketch in silence. She didn't flinch under his gaze. He cleared his throat. You see things better than I do. She slid the sketch toward him. He folded it carefully, tucking it into his coat pocket like something sacred. That night, as the crickets sang and coyotes wailed distant hymns, he spoke into the dark. You know, after Sarah died, I talked to ghosts more than I talked to people. Mika sat beside him on the porch steps, knees hugged to her chest. She wanted to be buried under the apple tree, he went on. Said the blossoms made her feel alive. But the tree died after she did. Whole damn place did, truth be told. Mika didn't answer, but she reached into the pocket of her rough-woven dress and pulled out a tiny wooden charm. A tree, twisted, gnarled, carved with a knife too dull for such fine work. She placed it beside his boot. He picked it up, held it to the fading light. A breath caught in his throat. You keep making things like this, he said hoarsely. We might both start to believe something good can grow here again. 2 nights later, they heard riders again. This time, not sneaking. This time, bold. 4. Of them. Calder didn't wait for them to come close. He lit the lantern, stood out on the porch with the repeater across his chest. You lost? He called. A voice answered, smooth and oily. Looking for a runaway. Apache girl. Might have seen her come this way. Don't keep Apaches, Calder replied. Don't keep anyone. The men chuckled. See? That's the trouble, the lead rider said. She ain't someone. She's property. Was stolen from a buyer up north. Mika appeared in the doorway, shotgun in hand. The rider saw her, smiled. Well, there she is. Lookin' sweet as ever. Calder raised his voice. You keep talkin', and I'll start shootin'. I'm not in the habit of returning what I paid for, especially not when it cost me the last sliver of my soul. The men laughed again. You think this ends well for you? I think it ends how it's supposed to, he said. Try me. There was a silence, tense, the kind before blood starts flying, but then the riders turned. Horses snorted. They disappeared into the dark. Calder exhaled slow. His hands trembled slightly as he lowered the rifle. Mika watched his face. They'll be back, he said. She nodded, then stepped beside him and tapped her chest. Once, and pointed to him, then made a motion with her hands like a rope binding them together. He swallowed hard. Yeah, he whispered. We're tied now. The next day, Calder taught her how to shoot proper. She already knew most of it, her hands steady, aim true, but he showed her the rhythm of the land, the way sound echoed off the hills, how to breathe with the trigger, not against it. He caught himself smiling when she knocked a tin can clean. Off the fence. Damn, he muttered. You ever miss? She raised an eyebrow, shrugged. He laughed. First time in years. It startled them both. In the afternoon, they fixed the barn roof together. She climbed like a cat, unafraid of the height. Calder handed her nails, watched her shoulders move like water under skin. Later, they sat in the shade of the broken windmill. He passed her a canteen. She drank, then offered it back. I was a bastard in the war, he said suddenly. Did. Things I won't repeat. Thought killing made a man strong. She tilted her head, curious. Truth is, it just makes you hollow. Mika took the knife from her belt, carved something into the dirt between them. A spiral. No beginning. No end. What's that mean? He asked. She looked up, touched her chest. Then his. Then drew a line between. Understanding passed like thunder with no sound. That night, he made stew. Badly. She pretended to like it anyway. They shared a blanket by the fire. Didn't touch. But they didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. Days grew warmer. They built a fence around the vegetable garden, repaired the chicken coop. She began speaking in gestures, slowly at first, until they built their own language. He didn't need words when her eyes told him everything. One evening, a storm rolled in. Fast, dark, mean. They raced to tie down what they could. Mika slipped in the mud, and Calder caught her by the arm. Their eyes locked, lightning carving. The sky behind her. He didn't let go right away. She didn't pull away. Rain drenched them. The wind howled. But they stood there, soaked to the bone, two people who had nothing but each other, and a ranch full of ghosts, when they finally got. Inside, they were laughing. Breathless. Alive. Later, he lit a fire and sat close, watching her dry her hair by the flames. She turned to him and pressed her fingers to his lips gently. Then she leaned in and whispered a single word. Home. He didn't speak. Just stared. Then nodded. The next morning, she handed him a folded piece of cloth. He opened it. A carving. Two figures. One tall, one smaller. Side by side, standing in front of a house with smoke rising from the chimney. The same image she'd sketched weeks ago, but now it was finished. She'd even carved a third figure in the distance. A hawk flying overhead. His breath hitched. She watched him carefully. Unsure. He looked at her, eyes shining. You gave me back something I never thought I'd see again. What? She asked. It was the second word he'd heard her speak. Hope, he said. She smiled. A real one this time. And just like that, the man who spoke to no one had someone he couldn't imagine losing. But in the distance, smoke rose on the edge of the hills. The world hadn't forgotten them, and neither had the men who wanted her back. The sun rose late over the ranch, dragged upward by smoke-colored clouds and the hush of approaching heat. Calder stood by the fence, staring at the cattle in the south pasture with a furrowed brow and hands tucked behind his back. The ground was too dry, the grass too thin. A bad season threatened, and he felt it in the brittle air. Still, the ranch was holding together better than it had in years. Fences stood where they used to fall. The well no longer moaned when the bucket hit bottom. There were 2 coffee cups on the porch instead of one. Mika emerged from the barn. Shirt rolled at the sleeves, carrying the saddle she'd oiled the night before. Her long black hair was tied in a thick braid down her back, swinging like a whip as she walked. She looked younger now, still silent, but no longer wary. Calder watched her approach and tipped his hat. She answered with a nod, lips curled faintly into something close to a smile. They rode out together, early, the sky barely awake. She took the lead, guiding her horse with knees and light taps, her figure silhouetted by morning gold. Calder followed. at a slower pace, content to watch. She'd found her rhythm here. She moved like she belonged, not just on the land, but in it. They rode to check the northwest fence, broken by a windstorm days before. She worked fast, her hands knotting wire and smoothing posts without hesitation. Calder handed her nails, and said little. Words had become secondary. They communicated in looks, gestures, moments of shared silence. When they returned to the ranch, a black snake slithered under the henhouse. Calder reached for his revolver, but Mika was faster. She drew her knife, pinned it clean through the skull, and tossed the body into the brush. He whistled. "You get any faster, I'm going to start charging rent." She raised an eyebrow and motioned to the house, then mimed sweeping, cooking, and fixing a hole in the roof. Then pointed to herself. Calder chuckled. Fair point. Later, she brought in a sick calf, barely walking and covered in flies. She stayed up that night nursing it, feeding it by hand while Calder boiled herbs for a poultice she insisted on using. By morning, the calf stood, weak but alive. She rubbed its head and whispered something soft, something only could hear. Calder watched from the doorway, arms crossed. You could have left it. Not all of them can be saved. She didn't look at him, just replied in a near whisper. This one could. The weight of her voice, rarely used, hung in the air like a benediction. As the days passed, Calder began teaching her more than chores. He showed her how to mend a rifle, clean the chimney, trade at the supply post without being cheated. She picked up every lesson with speed, but never arrogance. He told her about saddle leather and horse teeth, about the names of birds and the signs in the sky. She told him nothing about her past, but sometimes her eyes gave things away, a flicker of grief, a sudden fear when thunder rolled, a smile at the scent of mesquite. One afternoon, Calder found her standing by the old apple tree. It hadn't blossomed in 10 years, just gray bark and bent limbs. She was carving a circle into the base. "What are you doing?" He asked. She turned to him and said, "Marking where new roots can grow." He stared at the tree, then at her. "I buried Sarah under this one," he said. "Figured the tree died with her." Mika stepped back. The circle was small, etched deep like a wound healing from within. "Maybe not," she said. That night, he drank a single shot of whiskey and tossed the bottle into the fire. It cracked, flared, and disappeared. The next morning, Mika handed him a slip of hide. On it, she'd burned a design, a house with 2 figures standing beneath it, holding hands, surrounded by hills and stars. He traced it with a calloused finger. "You see something I don't." She nodded. He folded the hide and placed it in the old cedar box where Sarah's letters once lived. Later that week, they went to town together. The townsfolk stared, whispered, made comments Calder chose not to hear. He bought nails, sugar, and flour. Mika traded beadwork for fabric and seeds. A boy asked if she was for sale. She said nothing. Calder put a hand on the boy's shoulder, squeezed just hard enough. The boy turned pale and walked away. In the evening, a stranger arrived at the ranch gate. Tall, sharp-dressed, with a silver star pinned to his chest. Not a sheriff. A hired man with polished boots and polite cruelty in his smile. Names. Lanton, he said. Rafe Lanton. Owned most of the land south of the San Pedro. Calder didn't shake his hand. "I've heard about you," Lanton continued. "Took in an Apache girl. Brave or foolish? What do you want?" Calder asked. Lanton gestured at the ranch. "This place could be something real with the right partner. Sell to me. You walk away richer than you ever dreamed. Not for sale." Lanton's smile didn't change. "Everything's for sale, Briggs. The land, the girl, especially her. There's a bounty up north. 10 times what you paid." Calder's jaw tightened. She has a name. So do I, Langton said, and you'd do well to remember it. He turned his horse with a sharp tug and rode off without another word. That night, Calder sat with Mika under the stars, sharpening his knife. He'll come back, she said. I know. He wants blood. He'll get it if he tries. She looked at him, face serious. Why did you keep me? He set the knife down. I didn't plan to. Thought maybe $5 would buy me something to feel sorry for. But it didn't. It gave me something to fight for. She lowered her gaze. You don't own me. No, he said. But I can offer you something better than ownership. I can offer you half. She blinked. He rose, walked into the house, and came back with the land deed. Laid it across her lap. Half of everything. The dirt, the house, the cattle. If you want it. She stared at the paper. Why? Because you've built more in 3 months than I have in 3 decades. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the deed. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. 3 days later, she planted the first seeds in the garden. Beans, squash, corn. She knelt in the dirt and whispered to them, old words from a language he didn't understand. The next morning, she came into the house and placed something small in his hand. A ring. Bone-carved, smooth, shaped with care. He stared at it, confused. She looked at him and said softly, Not wife, not yours, but partner. His chest ached with something warm and terrible. He nodded. Later that day, smoke rose on the western ridge. Not cooking smoke, not fire for warmth. He saddled the horses and checked the rifles. Mika stood beside him, eyes on the horizon. Is it time? She asked. Yeah, he said. It is. They rode out, side by side, into a storm that hadn't broken yet, but was already rumbling loud. The land had been his once. Now it was theirs, and they would fight for it, not just with bullets, but with the kind of bond that could not be bought or broken. By sundown, the firelight flickered against their porch. In the distance, riders gathered in the dark. But on the Yog ranch, there were 2 shadows standing strong, and one promise unspoken. This home would not fall without a war. The flames came in silence. No warning, no thunder of hooves. Just the distant flicker of fire against the black sky and the thick, acrid scent of burning timber curling into Calder's nostrils before the smoke itself reached his lungs. He bolted, upright from the porch where he'd been dozing, the rifle already in his hands. The fire wasn't from the stove or the brush pile. It was from the barn. He ran. Mika was already ahead of him, hair unbound and billowing behind her, the shotgun. She kept near the hearth, gripped tightly in her arms. Sparks rained down like ash from hell, lighting the corral fence as the horses screamed and kicked. The barn doors caved inward with a groan, a guttural death cry as timber split and metal hinges melted into slag. One horse still inside. Her. Mika didn't hesitate. She dropped the gun and ran straight into the fire. Mika! Calder shouted, but his voice was drowned in the roar of burning wood. He raced to the side entrance, kicking in the half-collapsed doorway, smoke searing. His throat. Inside, the air was an oven, blistering and choking. Through the wall of flame, he saw her one hand on the Mare's halter, the other holding a cloth over her nose. The animal flailed, panicked, but she pressed her forehead to its muzzle, whispering. Words he couldn't hear. Calder surged forward, grabbed the halter rope, and together they dragged the terrified horse out into the night. The moment they cleared the blaze, the roof came down behind them, sending sparks exploding into the sky. They collapsed in the dirt, coughing, heaving, clothes scorched, skin red and raw. The Mare trembled, but stood. Calder turned to her, voice rasping, You're insane. Mika coughed once, then gave him a look, a crooked grin, blackened with soot, fierce and shining dot. Then came the shot. The bullet hit the dirt inches from Calder's boot. Another followed, sparking off the edge of the watering trough. He grabbed. His rifle pulled Mika behind the barrel as more gunfire rattled through the night. From the ridge above, shadows moved. 3 men, maybe 4. Firelight danced off their rifles. Calder spotted one broad-shouldered, wide hat, riding a white gelding. "Rafe Lanton, you should have sold while you could, Briggs." A voice called, echoing off the canyon walls. "Come down and try me, Lanton." Calder roared back. Gunfire. Answered. They crawled to the house under cover of the corral, Mika retrieving the shotgun from the dirt as Calder laid down, suppressing fire. Windows shattered behind them. The wind carried the scent of kerosene. "They're going to torch it," Mika whispered, checking the chamber. Calder nodded grimly. "Let him try." They barricaded the front windows with overturned tables, stacked crates along the walls, and snuffed the lanterns. The fire from the barn gave just enough light to silhouette approaching bodies. One came from the right, crouched low. Mika raised the shotgun, breathed once, and pulled the trigger. The blast sent him spinning backward into the fence. 2 more rushed in, one carrying a torch. Calder fired twice, and both fell. He ducked as bullets shattered the porch railing. A knife embedded itself in the doorframe inches from his ear. "They're flanking," he said. Mika motioned to the back door. They slipped out into the shadows, circling the house until they reached the side shed. Inside, the old dynamite he used for clearing rock. Calder stared at it, then at her. She tilted her head. A question. He nodded once. They lit 2 sticks, then ran. The explosions shook the earth, hurling dust and debris into the air. A scream followed, one of Lanton's men thrown from his horse. The fight surged into chaos. Calder dropped another man near the well. Mika lunged from behind a rain barrel, driving her blade into the thigh of one charging with an axe. Then Calder saw him, Lanton standing by the garden fence, pistol raised, aiming for Mika's back. "Don't!" Calder shouted, but the shot came. Mika spun, staggered, fell to her knees. Calder roared, rage a wildfire in his veins. He sprinted across the yard, tackling Lanton into the dirt. They wrestled, fists flying, teeth gritted. Lanton slammed the butt of his gun into Calder's face. Blood poured from his nose. Calder grabbed the nearest rock and brought it down on Lanton's temple. Again and again, Lanton collapsed, still, maybe dead. Calder stumbled to Mika, heart thudding, terror coiling in his chest like a rattlesnake. She was on her back, breathing shallowly, hand pressed to her side. Blood soaked her shirt. No, stay with me," he said, lifting her gently. Trying to stop the bleeding, her eyes fluttered. Her hand reached up, trembling fingers brushing his face. "Home," she whispered. "You're not dying," he said, voice cracking. "You're not allowed, not after all this." She smiled faintly, then passed out. Calder carried her into the Hio house, barricaded the doors, and worked through the night. He boiled water, cleaned the wound, stitched it as best he could with shaking hands. She didn't wake. Dawn crept in, slow and blood orange. The fires had died. The men who attacked those still alive had fled. Calder sat beside her bed, face hollowed, body aching. He held her hand and didn't move. Hours passed. Then, a breath. She stirred. Her eyes opened. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. Mika looked around, then back at him. "You almost did." She tried to sit. He stopped her gently. "We won," he said. "They're gone. All of them." Her hand curled into his. He sat with her the rest of the day, neither of them speaking. There was nothing to say. Not yet. A week later, the sheriff arrived with 2 deputies, took one look at the bullet holes and the scorched ground, and said, "Hell happened here?" Calder just nodded. "Lanton's dead?" the sheriff added. Some of his men turned. "Up near Tucson, with rope burns on their necks. Word is they told everyone to steer clear of this place." "They should," Calder said. The sheriff looked at Mika. "She's still yours?" "No," Calder said. "She's her own. But she lives here, and so do I," the sheriff nodded once. "You're gonna have trouble, you know that?" "I've had trouble," Calder replied. "Now I've got peace." When they were alone again, Mika stood by the apple tree. The rain had come 2 days before. The tree, once dead and forgotten, had bloomed a single pink flower. She touched it, fingers gentle, reverent. "I was never supposed to survive," she said quietly. He stepped behind her. "Neither was I." They stood that way for a while. Then he pulled a small box from his coat. Inside, a ring, carved from bone, wrapped in leather, etched with 2 names, hers and his. "I'm not asking to own you," he said. "I just want to walk beside you until the end." She took the ring, turned it over in her hand. Her eyes met his. "I already have," she said. They married in silence beneath the blooming tree, with only wind and birds as witnesses. The ranch healed slowly. So did they. The scars remained, but they no longer defined them. Mika painted the barn again, new wood, new symbols. The stories of survival, of fire and blood and beginnings. Calder rebuilt the porch, repaired the fence, planted a new garden where the old one had burned. They didn't talk much about what they'd lost, but sometimes Calder sat by the window with a cup of coffee and watched her move across the field, strong and sure, and thought of what he'd found. He'd lost a wife, lost years to silence and shame, but in a cage in Dry Creek, he had found the warrior, and in saving her, she had saved him. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the wildest hearts are the ones that teach us how to live again.